Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for geekvibesnation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release roundup. So if you're new here, it's pretty simple. What we do is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases. Some are good, some are bad, some are like the scraping the bottom of the barrel, but we always have a really good time talking about them. So, with that, I have not one, but two Warner Archive titles to talk about. So these are both kind of interesting. One I had seen before, but it's been a while, and one was like brand new to me. So I'm going to start off with the Great Ziegfeld. So I kind of had to look this one up because I'm like, wait, we talked about this before, but there's like a whole slew of like Ziegfeld movies. Yeah, now this one is a little bit more of like a biodrama about Flo Ziegfeld himself, and this movie is a whopping 3 hours long. So if you think Hollywood loving these long biopics is a new thing, it is not. This movie is a pretty sweeping and charming look at Ziegfeld. And I have to say, William Powell is perfectly cast here. Powell brings a very devilish charm to the role, and it's really easy to understand how he could convince people to invest in him, but also really attract these like amazing talents and these amazing people. Opposite him is Marna Loy, and obviously they're a pretty huge pairing, known for doing the Thin Man movies. But here she plays Billy Burke, which I always find really fascinating since Billy Burke was very much like alive and thriving at this time. You probably know Billy Burke if you don't know the name. She is best remembered for playing Glenda the Good Witch. But beyond that, she was just a legendary performer, and I did look it up, and she did act as consultant on this film. um, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's a little dry at points. Obviously, I don't think it needs to be 3 hours long, but it really does give it a chance to breathe, and you really do feel like you understand these characters, especially like Ziegfeld. And I cannot stress how much I freaking love William Powell in this role. Like he is just, I mean, even watching him, I'm like, yeah, I would give him my money probably. You want to invest in some like crazy scheme? Where do I sign? So,
Yeah, if not
um,
William Powell, who?
who else, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so this has a couple really nice featurettes. One is on Ziegfeld on film, so that kind of gives you a little bit of the history of film, sort of based on his life and or productions, and also a newsreel and cartoons. So it kind of gives you that whole um, old school Saturday or movie matinee with all like the newsreel and the cartoons and stuff. So that's pretty fun. As far as it looks, it's really stunning. Again, this was from I think 36, and yeah, I love. I mean, Warner Archive's great, but I mean, a movie like this that has very elaborate stagings and costumes and musical numbers, you really want all that stuff to pop, and this very much does here. So my next title is Madame Bovary, and I just think that's so weird to say. Um, but I know it's based on a book, so we're getting classy in this bitch. Uh, so I think this is really fascinating. So this is the pair, the one of the pair that I had not seen before, and it has a very nice meta framing device. The film opens in a court, and the court is like trying to ban this book and saying how awful it is, and it's has no morals, etc. The author is played by James Mason, and he's pleading his case. And as he's pleading his case, he's kind of like that's where the movie itself kind of comes in. So this is, of course, not a not so subtle allusion to censors in Hollywood having issues adapting this book to film. So I thought that was a really interesting sort of way to frame this film. And outside of that, it's very well acted. It's well directed. Um, kind of like Ziegfeld, the big budget really helps um, like really lend itself to this like gravitas of these like big numbers. Like there's a ballroom scene in here that is really awesome. And, I mean, even for the time, it must have been very expensive. There is like tons of extras, and you have extras that have to know how to dance. And it's like a very complicated scene, but it's very pivotal to the narrative. So I thought, like, I don't know, it just stuff like that I love because it just gets you so swept up into this world and you get really invested in the characters. So yeah, this one's really good. Looks good as well. This one has a featurette, or no, rather a short, and then a cartoon in the trailer. So nothing like amazing extra wise, but I mean you do get the film, do get it looking great, sounding great. Um, this one was really good. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but I mean, if you dig like costume dramas and like it's just all very melodramatic in the best possible way, yeah, I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, whenever I was watching that one, and that's a Vincent Minnelli film, and I just was like the amount that man worked back in the day, because it seems like every other Warner Archive release is a Vincent Minnelli film, and I'm just like, man, this dude was working back in the day.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I watched another adaptation of it last year. I believe it was in one of the Arrow video sets that I did for Claude Chabrol, I believe. I think he did one of the adaptations with Isabelle Huppert, and that one is always a lot more eyebrow raising than this one, because this was obviously made during the production code, so they couldn't get too racy. But I did like I probably actually like this one a little bit more, because I do really like Jennifer Jones, and I just recently listened to a You Must Remember This podcast about her, and got a lot of her background. So that was just a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh, conveniently I'm watching this. So it was fun to kind of get that background on her actual life, and then see kind of what she was doing in this movie. And I also want to comment on The Great Ziegfeld. For Oscar completus, this was one of the few lingering Best Picture winners that didn't have a Blu-ray release. There's still a few more. Hopefully, we'll get Around the World in 80 Days this year. But that was one of the few lingering ones. So if you're a completist, Warner Archive has really treated us well. So add that to your collection for sure. And I will dive into my first title. It is one of my favorite labels, and I love, ever since they started switching to getting distributed by MVD Entertainment. Selfishly, because I can view more of their stuff, but I like they're getting a little bit broader reach. And this is actually a re-release of one that they put out through OCN Distribution a few years ago, but it's now getting a standard retail release, and that is Fun City Edition's Radio On, which I believe is a 1979 film by Christopher Pettit. And here's the interior. And here's kind of the VA or the cassette type of cover art you have here, which is in line with what the movie is about, because there is a narrative to this, but this is a film that you could probably classify more as like vibes, if you're kind of into that kind of like dreamy filmmaking, because comes from a kind of a disciple of Vin Vendors. He's actually a consulting producer on this title. But the rough framework of this is it's about a guy who learns about his brother's death at the beginning of the film, and he goes on like a road trip to go figure out what happened to his brother. And along the way, there's a lot of just like him driving and listening to music and coming across like some random characters here and there. And then there's like some radio announcements that kind of give you a little bit of clue into what's happening in the country at the time and everything. like what the era of Britain that they're in, and eventually he arrives to where his brother lived and tries to figure all that out. But a lot of this, it's a road movie with just a lot of a really good soundtrack is like the heart of this movie. Like the soundtrack really like informs the narrative a lot of the time. And this has a lot of like people like Kraftwerk, Devo, David Bowie starts out the movie, Robert Fripp, Ian Dury. There's a lot of great musicians on here, and it's a really music forward movie. So it's a black and white film with interestingly composed shots and like a great soundtrack. If you're going for the actual narrative, I don't think you're going to get a lot out of it. It's not like a juicy narrative or anything, but it's there are some interesting conversations along the way. Like Sting comes up or pops up as one of like the people he meets on his journey, and then there's just a couple other not so notable actors, but whenever you listen to the commentary track, you're like, okay, this person was in this movie, or this person was in this movie. So if you're not into that kind of like loose narrative, kind of like vibe cinema, I don't think you're going to really love this one. But if you go along for the journey and just like can appreciate kind of more slow cinema, I think you'll really appreciate what this is going for. And especially if you're a Wim Wenders fan, I think you'll kind of understand a little bit more of kind of what this movie's going for. So if you're a fan of his, definitely check this one out. And this presentation is great. I had never picked up the previous Blu-ray, so like I said, it's a port over, but it's now getting a standard release. It comes from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. It looks very nice. The contrast for this black and white film is very good. Deep black levels, no overly blown, like no blown highlights. Everything's just tuned into the right level. Really well resolved film grain, no nicks or scratches. It's just a very beautiful transfer, DTS 2.0 sound. This does have some really great special features, a audio commentary track from a film historian, as I mentioned previously, and it has a couple of different interviews. There's a new 37-minute interview with the director, another 52-minute audio interview with the director that was on a BBC radio program that they include in audio form, and then a 42-minute archival interview with the director, but also the producer, and then a 24-minute visual essay, which is kind of like it was made in 1998 by the director Chris Pettit. That it kind of it's like a companion piece to Radio On, and it's called Radio On Remix, and it's even more vibe driven than the actual feature. So if you like the feature, you'll probably like it, but as like a standalone thing, I think it might be a little isolating to a normal audience, but I'm glad it was included along with some like trailers and all that stuff. So overall, solid release from Fun City Editions. I'm glad this is getting a wider release ever since they parted ways from OCN Distribution. So if you're a fan of Wim Wenders type cinema, check it out. It's a good road movie that's good on vibes and really great on music. So I recommend it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I definitely do love a good vibe movie that doesn't maybe have the strongest narrative. I've definitely enjoyed movies that really had no narrative. So
Yeah.
So my next title is a re-release, and I'm gonna let you all know if you do have this released already, like what's kind of different. It's not a lot, but it might inform you whether or not you want this or not. This is Pete Walker's The House of Long Shadows. And so let's take a look at this real quick first. No reversible art, but I think like the standard original release of this did not have a slipcover. This one does, and if you want one, like we always say, you want to like order this pretty early. So now, before I jump into the movie itself, I did want to mention that this does port over, of course, the previous commentary tracks, but this also has a new documentary, which is really cool. That's a new feature on this re-release, as well as a new interview with Pete Walker. I'm a huge Pete Walker fan. A friend of mine, David Delval, who's actually in this commentary track, was really kind enough to. I had a Fab Press did a really cool book on Pete Walker, and he got that signed for me with some other stuff. Like Frightmare is like one of my all-time favorite movies of his. If you want kind of a icky, grimy 70s movie, that's a good one. But yeah, no, as far as this one goes, I just wanted to like first establish I love this director. I think he's very sorely underrated, and I think he's also kind of left out of the conversation when it comes to 70s and 80s grindhouse films. But this notably has Vincent Price, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and John Carradine all sharing the screen together. And I believe that's the first and only time that's happened. And sadly, they were kind of what remained of the big, horror icons at the time. This was 1983. So that right there is like, all right, I'm like sold. Unfortunately, while I do adore the scenes when all these like legends are together, the movie itself is not very good. I think the biggest issue is it's frankly very slow, and Walker really clogs the already thin narrative with like very lengthy dialogue scenes. I think it's like maybe a half hour into when we really start getting to like what the thrust of the plot is. The big selling point is these actors together, and while I think those scenes are great, it's not really the sort of meat and potatoes of the film. It's just kind of okay. I believe this is from the same print as the previous Blu-ray, which is good because that one looked really solid, and sounds good as well. And again, if you already own this and you're not sure if you want to like double dip, like I said, it does have some really nice new special features. But if that doesn't mean a lot to you, I guess just stick with your old copy. Or if you've never owned this, I don't know. I think it's good for completists of Pete Walker, or if you're kind of new to his filmography. I don't know if this is a really good place to start, but yeah, I still love the movie just for the fact that you do have all these amazing actors together. But I just wish it was like in a better, more fully realized sort of narrative.
Yeah. From what I remember, I think that is the same like the source of the transfer. I think they re-encoded it at a higher bit rate with it was one of those ones where they did a single layer disc whenever it was originally released. Now it's a double layer disc, and then they added that like hour 40-minute documentary on the making of the film. So that's a pretty significant addition. If you don't have it yet, I think it's worth definitely considering. If you don't have it, definitely go for this version because it's a lot better, like a lot more well-rounded. But I like the film mostly because of like you said, the reunion of the horror icons and actually having them have a substantial role with one another on screen. There's a few other movies where like they get a couple of them and kind of trick the audience into watching certain movies because they were promised like a reunion or like a merger of these two talents, and they kind of like get screwed over because it's like a really brief thing. But there's some substantial scenes between them in here, which I did appreciate, even if the movie itself isn't great. It's fine, I think. My next title, I have a few TV titles this week. The first is a manufactured on demand release from Lionsgate. This is The Spanish Princess, which continues a series that started in the early 2010s. First with, I believe it was The White Queen with Rebecca Ferguson, and then The White Princess with Jodie Comer. And now we have The Spanish Princess, which came out a few years ago. I believe it was 2018 or 2019 when it first aired. And you don't have to have seen those series if you just want to dive into this one. It's a period drama that's based on, I believe, named Catherine of Aragon, who was married to Henry the Eighth. The whenever numbers get involved, I could be a little bit wrong, but I believe this is. But he is the king who probably is most might know him as he cheated on his wife with Anne Boleyn, but this is telling his first wife Catherine, who is like a Spanish royalty, her story, and kind of giving her a little bit more agency and a little bit more well-rounded story, because she has a very fascinating story, and she's a very formidable woman with who doesn't deserve to be just like a footnote in history. And while this is based on a book series and there are some historical liberties taken, it's overall it stays to kind of the spirit of the truth of this kind of tale, and it's a really well done, entertaining period piece. And if you like kind of like Tudor drama, I think you'll like this one. People might know, I can't remember her name right now, and I don't know if it's on the back. It does not seem to be. The lady here who's playing Catherine, people might know as malicious comrade of Ramsay Bolton on Game of Thrones. She was always trying to get Sansa killed, and but she does a really nice job here, and I don't hate her as much in this series. She's actually really cool in this one. But it has a really interesting cast, and they bring some people of color more to the forefront than you get a lot of times in this genre, and they give them some actual like great storylines that are fleshed out, and there's like some three-dimensional characters that aren't just paying like background like characters that you never get to hear from. So there's a sense of inclusivity while still based on what I read being historically accurate. It's just a lot of times this element of history is kind of just brushed over. Mostly it's just kind of like court intrigue drama. There's sporadic action, not too much, but it's mostly just intrigue, and it's a really well done period drama, and I quite enjoyed it. And as I said, this is a manufactured on demand Blu-ray, so these are burn disc. So if you have a player that doesn't work well with burn disc, just be aware of that. This is actually, and my only kind of complaint with this release is, and I hadn't done my research before ordering this. This is actually a part 1 of the season. There's the first 8 episodes, which are this, and there's a second 8 episodes. This was released a little while ago, and then the second part of season 1 was released on DVD a while ago. So I don't know if they're going to release the second part on Blu-ray, which is a bummer. The way you can get around that is you can import a complete season or series set from Via Vision from Australia, who I talk about their imprint releases a lot. So it might be slightly pricier to import it, but given what this is priced at, I don't think it would be that much more to get the full series. I might end up having to do that if I don't see a second part materialize in the next year or two. Until then, I'll probably stream the second half just to get the full story. But I do want the full release, and that's a bit of a bummer that I didn't realize that this was just a part 1. But it is a good 8 episodes, and I did really like it. And there's also no special features on this, but the video looks great, and the sound is really good. DTS 5.1, crisp, clear picture. So I hope Lionsgate releases it for people domestically so they don't have to import it. But either way, I think it's a series worth checking out. It aired on Starz, so you can probably check it out on the Starz app if you're interested. But it's worth, if you're a fan of like Tudor dramas, definitely check it out. The Spanish Princess, it's really good.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really interesting and was not on my radar, but might have to check that out. So my next one is from another label that we really enjoy, Film Masters, and this one is The Devil's Partner, and it also includes Creature from the Haunted Sea. As with a lot of these titles, you have a booklet. Yeah, so you get a really nice booklet, which I will show you here. And So yeah, and then like the other releases, these have their own dedicated discs for each feature, which is really nice. I had seen Creature from the Haunted Sea before, but I had never seen The Devil's Partner. So that was an interesting watch. This movie really taps into sort of the 60s paranoia with like teen rebellion, but also kind of the fear of the emergence of like alternative religions like Wicca, Satanism. You would see this a little bit more prominently in like The Devil Rides Out and probably most notable Rosemary's Baby, but this kind of feels like a very proto those kind of films. So what I really enjoy about this movie is it does have that small town vibe that's just populated by straight up weirdos. There is a colorful array of drunks in this movie. Like the one is like kind of doing the bidding of like the bad guy in this, and like, dude, he's like straight up crazy. Um, and I love it. I don't know, like I feel icky when I say stuff like that because alcoholism is like a serious thing, but like I don't know, in these movies that was just kind of a thing. You would always have the lovable drunk. I mean, there was like I don't know who was it that was like the lovable drunk on Andy Griffith. Um,
Uh, it's been a while since I've watched it.
yeah,
I
but like
feel
you
I feel
know,
like a slacker for not knowing it off the top of my head.
but yeah, no, I mean it's just, but that's just like kind of the archetype. So, um, I I will say this movie has a lot of interesting and even really fun ideas. That never really feels like it kind of like works. Like there's this interesting sort of plot where it's like various like animal attacks with these like small town residents. So it does build up a really interesting sort of mystery. But I think that I won't spoil it, but I feel like the payoff's not really that great. It is like charming as hell though. And like I said, it does have these quirky characters that I think is really fun and it makes it interesting. It's not that very long, so I never feel like it totally outstays its welcome. Um, and Creature from the Haunted Sea, I don't have a lot to say about it. It's just a really fun, schlocky, like 50s film. I think that was one. These are both Corman films. I know Devil's Partner was one that like Roger Corman maybe purchased, but didn't actually produce. But I know Creature from the Haunted Sea, he did produce or maybe direct. I wasn't quite sure which, but both of these have some really nice special features. They all have like commentary tracks, which I love. Um, they look really good too. Like Devil's Partner, for example, there's it's not pristine, but I mean you can tell kind of how it was sort of cleaned up. It does have that really nice, crisp, clean look to it. It's black and white, but you can really see some of the nice details in this movie. And it's not a very visual movie. Not neither one of these are. So it's not that big a deal, but it is nice to have these in nice looking restoration. So yeah, I love these. I think that like Film Masters is killing it, and I'm like excited to see what else they put out later this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I my one qualm that is it The Devil's Partner? Is that what it's called?
Mm.
Um, that cover art is so freaking cool, and it promises a centaur, and there is nary a centaur to be
Yeah,
seen. There is a person who turns into a horse, but it's not a centaur, and I was so disappointed
Bill cheated.
that cool cover art, like that's how they get you. But I was just like, man,
I was trying.
I was
Yeah, I was trying to remember what that drunk guy said to that woman. That was like wildly inappropriate, but like funny. Do you remember what I'm talking about? He's like,
no, I just remember the aftermath of what happened to him. I don't remember what he said.
yeah, no, it was like, oh, I'm not going to embarrass myself and try to like figure out what it was, but it was like he he was having this argument with this like barkeep or something, he like basically like called her fat, but in this really funny rhyme, and then like just like a cheeky little devil like did that and then kind of scampered off like a
Mhm.
like it's like I said,
Yeah.
it's so weird. I love it. And yes, I you are right. That is like it is no centaurs to be had. So
Missed opportunity. That's all I'm saying. My next title, staying with TV. This is from Universal. This is the second season of their sci-fi show, Resident Alien. And every time I keep writing this, I keep writing Resident Evil, but I'm like, no, Resident Alien. But okay, so this is the second season that aired a couple years ago. And this is on 4 disc, 16 episodes. The great Alan Tudyk stars in this one. And I picked up the first season a little while ago when it was on sale at groove.com. They usually have some really good deal because they're owned by Universal, so they give some good deals on Universal product. But I hadn't been able to watch the second season as it aired or anything. So I was excited to get the Blu-ray release, and I'm glad they're still supporting TV on Blu-ray. And while it's not as strong as the first season, I think it is still a pretty fun season. For those who don't know the premise, it's about Alan Tudyk plays an alien who is sent to Earth to gather some information and eventually like start exterminating people. He takes over the humanoid appearance that of the Alan Tudyk appearance, and who is a doctor, and he kind of gets swept up in this murder investigation in the first season, and he starts to learn about the human experience through his experiences like interacting with this small town community who are full with their own quirky characters, and it's funny, and it's a good blend of like science fiction and mystery and comedy. It's a really good blend, but a lot of the fun of the first season is just seeing this alien trying to keep his identity hidden while also learning about the world and starting to soften a little bit on humanity and maybe not want to carry out his orders. The second season, I won't spoil much about the first season, or but just very lightly, more people know about his identity than there was in the first season. And he is a little bit more comfortable with humanity. He's still like learning some things and customs and everything, but you don't have as much of that kind of like sense of like exploration and learning on his part. So the comedy on that front is a little bit dialed back in the second season, but I think it does make up for it in trying to flesh out some of the ensemble and giving them a little bit more to do and revealing more things about the characters. So it feels a little bit more plot driven than the first season, which had a little bit more like zany quality to it, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And with this being 16 episodes compared to the 10 episodes of the first season, there are other moments here and there where it feels a little bit stretched out more than it needs to be. But I think it was a pretty good hit for sci-fi, so I think they just wanted to beef it up a little bit. But it's still a pretty fun time throughout. And the reason to watch this is for Alan Tudyk, who I've always loved like for decades now, and I love that he's getting like this lead opportunity in this series to really stretch himself and just show like the immense talents that any fan of his knows that he has. But the ensemble is also really great, and it's just a very charming show, and I understand why people like it. And conveniently, as we record this, I think it was like yesterday, they just announced the third season premiere date, which is coming here in a couple weeks in February. So now's the perfect time to get caught up on this show, so you can get caught up and be ready for the third season in mid-February. You got like a month, so get to it. But this Blu-ray release is fantastic in terms of audio video. Great video, perfectly consistent, no real any issues or anything. DTS 5.1 audio. There's like 4 minutes of deleted scenes on the last disc, nothing too substantial, but there are some deleted scenes, so a little bit of extra value. But overall, I'm just glad that Universal keeps supporting TV shows on physical media, because a lot of companies don't, and I'm glad that them and Warner Brothers are still ones that still try to support on Blu-ray. So Resident Alien, it's a fun show. If you haven't watched it, definitely check it out. Sample it if you need to. I think you'll fall in love with it, but then get the Blu-rays because it's definitely worth it.
Not Resident Evil.
Resident Alien.
But that sounds like a cool crossover though. I think we need to get to
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, so my next title is my only 4K title, and wow, it's a doozy. That is Suspect Zero. Ooh. And this has Aaron Eckhart, Ben Kingsley, and Carrie Ann Moss. This is what the inside looks like. Um, so yeah, this movie's really bad. I really wanted to like it, but we'll get into it. So this movie has something I never thought I'd see or want to see, and that is the great Ben Kingsley doing a god awful Southern accent. Like, it's atrocious. It's so bad that it really like grates on you, and like he's the main character, so it's like a lot of him. So Suspect Zero, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It feels like a really horrible knockoff of Seven. Um, the issue is there's a few good ideas, but it's bogged down and kind of ruined by a very confusing plot mixed with pretentious imagery. Like if you remember, like Seven had that amazing opening to like it was like a remix of like a Nine Inch Nails song, and it had like sort of like a montage of like John Doe's diaries and stuff. Like they try to do something like that sprinkled throughout, and it just feels very derivative of that movie, but also like very edge lordy, very early like aughts, trying to be like I don't know, really just edgy. There is an interesting movie kind of buried in here, and that is to talk about remote viewing, which probably a lot of you are familiar with, but if not, the simple version of it is it was something that the military and CIA were experimenting with, that people could psychically sort of view things from far away, and then they were trying to use this for like tactical applications. The springboard for that in this sort of like serial killer thriller kind of thing, I thought was really cool at first. Like it was a little bit grating at the beginning, but then when they got to like fleshing that out a little bit, I was like, oh shit, this is actually really cool. But then it sort of like negates that a little bit. And then it's like, oh, it's not really that interesting anymore. And you just fumbled the ball. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I didn't like it, but it kind of has a so bad it's good sort of charm at times. I do love like Carrie Ann Moss, so if you're a big fan of her, sure, she's in it. Maybe she doesn't get enough to do, but yeah. So yeah, it's disappointing. I mean, there's a lot of talent in front of and behind the camera in this, but it just smacks of like trying to be like Seven and trying to do a David Fincher film without really understanding like why or how his films work. So your mileage may vary, but I didn't like the movie. I'm gonna just be completely honest. I think it had some, like I said, good ideas, but it ruins them at every sort of opportunity. Like it's just amazing how much of a clusterfuck this movie is. So I believe all the features are poured overs. I think maybe the 4-part featurette might be new to this release, which takes you through different aspects of the film. So, not a great film, but I think the release itself is really nice. At least there's a really nice array of special features, and as far as how it looks really nice. I mean, it's kind of like hard to say that it looks nice because it's shot kind of ugly, but you can at least tell the restoration seemed nice. It didn't seem overworked. It seemed very natural. You have that nice film grain, but no, it's not good. And I really hated watching it, if I'm being honest. Did you
Yeah.
now you've didn't you review this?
I know I never reviewed it. I had it amongst like the options in our holiday gift guide, like the
Mm,
written
mm,
one,
mm.
just like as 4K titles that had come out from Kino, but I never got around to reviewing that one. But I was shocked whenever I heard that I was getting a 4K release because I remembered it from whenever it was released. I don't remember it, like what the movie like quality was. I just remember I was like, this is a random ass title to be getting a 4K release, but happy for the fans if there are any, but it was just a shocking announcement
Yeah.
from
And
Kino.
listen, if there are any
But
like diehard Suspect Zero fans, chime in the comments.
mhm,
We want to hear from you. Like, prove me wrong. Like, what am I not getting here?
they are living their best life with this release, and I'm excited for
Yeah.
them. My next title, I'm sticking with Kino Studio Classics. This is a 1982 film called Split Image. And this has Michael O'Keefe, Karen Allen, James Woods, Brian Dennehy, and Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda is playing a charismatic cult leader who gets a who has like established a compound, and he gets a pretty affluent, the son of an affluent family, kind of uh, inducted into his ranks because he is kind of preaching on something that the son is kind of struggling with, like his family's like wealth and how they kind of are, how they act within the world and how they contribute to society, or the lack of contributing to the overall society. And he has a lot of issues with his family's status in life, and the kind of dogma that's being taught by this cult leader really speaks to him, and he kind of gets immersed in this community. And his family hires James Woods' character, who has had history with this this cult, of like getting people extracted and deprogrammed from some of their teaching. But Karen Allen plays another girl who's at the cult, who the young man starts to have a relationship with, and or at least have feelings for, and really forms a close bond with. So that's like an extra layer that draws him into this life, but it makes it hard for him to get out whenever his parents try to extract him from this life. And overall, I think it's a really good movie. It's not quite great. The first hour especially, I was pretty riveted and I was really enjoying it. I don't think it finishes as strongly. It's fine. It just kind of, I don't know. There's a little bit something missing for me in like the last 30 minutes or so that kept it like elevated to another level. But overall, if you enjoy or are intrigued by stories about people being like lost in like the cult life, I think it's a very interesting movie. And overall, I did really enjoy it. I think it's like everyone does a good job. Brian Dennehy plays the father who cares for his son, but he can't quite relate to why he has like fallen into this life. And there's a lot of drama to mind from there. And there's a lot of social like thematic stuff with like social equality and class disparity and all this stuff. And so overall, I think it's a really good movie. And if the premise interests you at all, definitely check it out. This comes from a 2K scan of the 35 millimeter interpositive. It looks very nice. They've cleaned up most of the scratches or anything. And according to the commentary track, I think this has only been released on physical media, like back in like the VHS days, in a full frame form. So this is the first time it's being released in its native widescreen. So that enough is enough for anyone to upgrade this, is to finally see it in widescreen since it's the first time in theaters. And so it looks really nice. Has a commentary track from film historian Daniel Kramer, who does a really good job of giving a lot of context to this. And then there's some trailers and stuff, and it sounds good as well. So overall, Split Image, it's a good one, pretty solid find from Kino, and I'm glad that they rescued it. It's a good movie.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I think that is one I didn't request, but now I might have to like see when it's on sale, check that out. That looks really interesting. And yeah, that cast is seems very eclectic. So that's always good So, okay, my next title is, I guess, just a trigger warning. This is very assault heavy, so yeah. This is called S&M Hunter Begins, and obviously, I feel like it goes without saying, if you're not into this kind of title, skip this review, skip this movie. If you're still here with me, let's get into it. So, this is one of those movies that, like, I'm really glad I took some notes because I watched it and it did not stick with me at all. It basically was very forgettable. But anyways, this is a prequel to S&M Hunter, which apparently is a sadistic superhero. In fact, the tagline of this is the story of how an average salaryman becomes an S&M superhero. So, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, the movie is only 60 minutes long, and I would say that it's has a very over the top premise, but it plays it mostly straight. Like, I think it is actually kind of dull. Um, it does feel kind of grimy because this obviously is like a pure male wish fulfillment fantasy kind of thing, having a pretty girl having complete control over her. And listen, like, if that's what you're into and consent is, consent's a thing, like, more power to you. Like, live your best life. But I know, like, the setup is sort of like these are like assaults. And I don't know, like, I think had the movie played up more of the camp elements, I think it would make it maybe feel less leery or less sort of like cringy, I guess. Because I think there is something to be said about using humor to sort of recontextualize something that's like kind of awful. Um, like, you see that in like Hogan's Heroes, where it's a comedy set in a POW camp. Like, that seems like that would not be a great thing, but it's having that sort of balance. It's like Chaplin making fun of Hitler and the Great Dictator. Obviously, it's using comedy to confront like awful things. But I don't know, like, if you're into like grimy, sort of like heteronormative like stuff, it's fine. I don't even think it's that like spicy to sort of recommend it to like people that kind of like this. It's just all around kind of womp, to be honest. Like, I didn't want to end with this film because I always like to try to end it on like a really positive note. So this one's just fine. Again, it's not very long. It's just under an hour. And yeah, there's some like fun sequences. There's like a sort of like, I guess if he's a superhero, they're kind of a supervillain and they have a sort of like battle at the end, which is kind of fun. But again, I feel like I wish this movie would have played up that aspect more. And it just feels like, I don't know. I don't mind some like sleaziness, but it just feels like there's no substance to even make that very impactful. So it's me.
Yeah, I knew whenever I saw that was being released, I was like, that's not a Dylan title, so I skipped it purposefully. But anyone who's excited about it, congratulations! It got a physical media release, even if it's not Blu-ray, but it's not for me. This next title is for me though. I'd seen the first couple seasons, and I saw that this was getting a complete series Blu-ray release, and I wanted to check it out because I didn't end up finishing it whenever it was originally airing. This is the complete series of The Sinner from Universal. This aired on USA Network for 4 seasons, and I really like this show. It's not completely consistent throughout all 4 seasons, and I'll get into that, but it's when it's working really well. So this stars Bill Pullman is the link throughout these 4 seasons. In the first season, you have Jessica Biel in the lead, along with Christopher Abbott. Carrie Coon is the kind of the bigger name in the second season, and Tracy Letts. Also, got to be careful with his packaging, or things will just slip right out. The third season, you have Matt Bomer in it, and I can't think of his name right now, but he was on the Mindy Project. And then the fourth season, there's not as big of a name. I think the biggest name is probably Frances Fisher, who people probably know best from Titanic. But it's kind of like a slightly like an anthology show, but just with the same detective going throughout the series. And the first season is fantastic. The one with Jessica Biel, where most of this run of this series is, it's not necessarily a who done it, but a why done it, like why they did it. Because in the very first episode of the first season, you see Jessica Biel's character just absolutely lose her mind and stab a man broad daylight on the beach. And it is up to the detective to figure out what happened in her past that led her to that. And the way this unfolds and like what is revealed it's riveting. And then the second season goes more almost into what I was just talking about. It goes into kind of like a cult territory where Carrie Coon's kind of like a charismatic leader of this like off the grid community. And you learn about what happened with her son and like this mysterious death that happened. The third season with Matt Bomer and Chris Messina, that's who I couldn't think of. Christopher Messina. That's the one that gets like the second season is just slightly down from the first, but it's still very good. The third season gets a little boring, unfortunately, and it feels like they were not quite like delivering their A game. But it's okay. It starts out well, but it does not a very great end to the season. And then the fourth and final season, which I had not seen before, because the third season it become a little bit of a slog. I did get around. I finally got to rewatch stuff, which the third season does play a little bit better on a rewatch, not waiting week to week. But then the final season is a lot of the Detective Harry dealing with the fallout from the third season, and it does turn more to a whodunit in this season, but also you're learning a little bit about what is happening. He's like, it's a situation where he's like trying to like get away from everything, but where he goes, a murder happens, and or a potential murder, disappearance / whatever happens, and he has to figure out what is happening within this community. It's just a really, if you like kind of like the modern like Boone and like prestige crime dramas, this is one of USA's like biggest wins in this category, because they were, for a long time, they were in their like characters welcome phase with like Psych and Burn Notice and Monk and everything. But this kind of transitioned them a little bit more, along with like Mr. Robot, into kind of like the prestige era of television, which I think they just announced they were going back to the characters welcome model, because I don't think they were having a lot of success beyond the two shows I mentioned. But the Sinner was very good, and I think it found even a bigger life whenever it was put on Netflix. So I think a lot of people discovered it on there. But I am glad to own this on physical media, because the first 2 seasons were released on Blu-ray separately, and then the third and fourth they're only contained to this set as of right now. So if you want the complete series, you'll need to get this set, and it's a good set, good audiovisual presentation. It's just a perfectly consistent series from the first to the last season. There's special features on the first season, but there's like 4 minutes of deleted scenes, and that's pretty much it. None of the other seasons have special features. But if you love crime mystery series, this one's really good. Bill Pullman is fantastic throughout. This is Jessica Biel's best performance, I would say, and I'm going for it. So The Sinner from Universal, I really like this show, and I'm glad it got a physical media release, so check it out.
Nice. I remember liking the first season a lot, and I haven't seen the other seasons. Um, but are they? Do you know if they're still on Netflix or? Yeah, okay. So that might have to be kind of a try before you buy. But I, yeah, no, that sounds awesome. And now I have my final title, which is Fireworks, and this was a indie movie from last year that got a DVD release, and I really wish it would have got a Blu-ray, but I'll get into that. The movie itself is the titular title of like Fireworks kind of alludes to it's kind of a double meaning, I guess. Fireworks, like it's like these two teenage boys that like meet and fall in love. The one guy's from sort of a broken home. He has like a stepdad that's like really awful. Tells him to like he basically doesn't like want him. It's pretty bad, and he gets like bullied by like the local like shitty homophobes in the area. And then the other I guess like father and son fireworks team that they like put on like fireworks and stuff. That's kind of the job. Um and yeah, it's a really sweet romance. I will say like it takes a little while to really get into that. Like I do appreciate the fact that it establishes like the little town that they're in, um, like how it's very narrow minded, um, like just establishing sort of like each kid has a very different sort of home life and how they kind of come together and whatever the one's kind of missing the other sort of complements and yeah, overall it's a really charming movie. It is very heavy at times. I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, I would say like the finale is very like bittersweet. But I will say this looks atrocious in DVD. Like there,
Mm.
and it's frustrating because there's a lot of like beautiful like landscapes and like they really kind of visually show off this like small provincial town. Um, and yeah, like it just looks so pixely and like not not at all like crisp and clean like you would want. Like I think it almost kind of, I mean, it doesn't ruin the movie, but it does take you out of it, especially when, you know, it is kind of showcasing these like lush landscapes. There's like a hunting scene at the beginning of the movie that like looks beautiful. Like it was shot really nicely, but like the convert to you know to DVD is just not good. I'm like kind of hoping this gets maybe a Blu-ray or at least maybe like a nice like HD. I mean, it might have like a nice HD sort of like VOD situation, which might be in that rare case preferable to the physical media release, which I know is blasphemous to say, but yeah, this it's a great film. It just does not look good on DVD. Like I always try to link in the description. The like Kino has a like VOD thing, and I think this is kind of an offshoot from Kino, right? The this like partner label or
Yeah,
like
they distribute yeah,
okay.
Cinephobia.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I thought so, but yeah, I was like, yeah, so I will link in description if that is indeed on their VOD platform. And I like that because it's still supporting Kino and it's still supporting these great titles. But you know, it might be like a try before you buy. And again, the the digital might be even like probably better looking, unfortunately, than the DVD. But it's a sweet movie. I really liked it. I really thought it was charming. Again, maybe it's a little bit slow, but I also do appreciate that they do take the time to really flesh out these characters, not only the characters, but like their home lives. Um, some of that can be very like triggering if like family stuff like that is kind of a sore spot that might be something to think about before watching it. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. It was one of those that like I was not on my radar last year, but I'm glad that I got to at least check it out. So with that, that is our show. As always, if you would please chime in the comments. We're not really doing a giveaway, but we still want to hear from you. We still want to get y'all's feedback on like the titles that we covered. Are you a fan of any of these? Is there any of these that we didn't quite vibe with, but you're like really a big fan? That would be kind of fun to hear. And yeah, just please subscribe. We put out a lot of great content. Like Tia has been doing some really fun top 10 videos, which I know I'm always talking about. They're so much fun. Um, and I had my first video essay um, like last month, so that was really fun. And yeah, we always have like really great content. I have a really big interview that is going to be posted. Well, probably will be posted by the time this is up, so that's exciting. So yeah, definitely subscribe, and as always, thank you for hanging out with us.